I'm rereading C.S. Lewis's book, Me, Christianity, and I want to share a bit about the chapter I've just read, which is the first two chapters about this guiding principle of a absolute morality. And many of us know that with Christianity, having a creator, having a God, means that he has outlined or given a set of a absolute guide for morality, right? There is a very definitive good, which is with God, and bad, which is, I guess, rejection and away, things that are away from God. Now, obviously, for one who is not Christian or doesn't believe in this, then this doesn't make sense. But if we even go back to how we view life and how we do things, at least for humans, and I would say for most humans, for most of man, there is this sense of an absolute morality, right? This sense that good should look a certain way and bad should look another, right? And even though people might grow up in different areas, in different countries, with different upbringings, this sort of idea of good and bad still looks very, very similar, right? There might be minor differences, but the similarities are far greater. In fact, it's quite intriguing how similar they might be. For example, selfishness is something that I believe is almost universally frowned upon, or at least it's not encouraged, right? It doesn't matter in what kind of society you've grown up in, whether it's in a remote island or whether it's in a Western organized civilization. Why did this go? Being able to, and this is what C.S. Lewis draws upon as an example, right? Imagine a world where you're applauded for running away from battle. You're applauded for backstabbing those who are kind and loving toward you. Does that kind of world exist? Is that even possible? Right? And I think the answer, at least looking back on human history, is no. So where do we get this guiding morality from? Or why do we have this? My belief, being a follower of Jesus, is that it's because we do have a creator. We do have a God that has created us and set this for us. And I think having this belief, I think it is objectively true, right? For most people who say, well, it's up to you, the individual, who determines what is good and what is bad. I think, honestly, that's a bit baloney, right? I think if you really consider it, if you really examine your thoughts and your way of thinking of morality, it really comes back down to, actually, there might be something more. For example, if, right, I said, okay, you know what? I think this is my good and bad. You can think of how your good and bad is, and I won't, cross that line. So I might think that what is good is being loving and kind. You might think that being good is minding your own business, and I say, hey, that's okay. But that should also mean that we can't compare different levels of morality, right? If I think my thought is correct, and I also respect that you think your thought is correct, then I can't say that your thought is either less correct, incorrect, or completely wrong, right? Because I am saying that, you know what? This idea of morality is you sort of think about it for yourself. You determine it for yourself. Sorry, it's interpreted by the individual, right? There's no collective absolute truth. It's in self-interpretation. And that's how a lot of people, that's what a lot of people believe, right? That this idea of good and bad, if there's no higher being, and for most people, let's say if the person they say there isn't a God, good and bad is determined by me, and my belief, then I can't say that someone else's good and bad is wrong, right? Because what I'm saying is that there's no absolute truth, and therefore it's up to the individual. So let's turn this on the head, and let's consider what the Nazis did in World War II to the Jews, which I believe most the majority of people would say what the Nazis did in World War II to the Jewish people was absolutely not okay, was evil, was heinous, was wrong. And since then, many countries have put in measurements to prevent things like that happening, to ensure that prisoners of war aren't treated a certain way, right? So we've just turned that thinking of morality on their heads, right? If I say that morality is up to the individual, then I can't necessarily say that what the Nazis believed, what the Nazis thought that what they were doing were correct is actually wrong, right? Unless there was some absolute truth to the respect of morality. So suppose the Nazis truly believed that what they were doing was okay. Let's say that Jews, exterminating Jews was good. That's what they truly believed. Then if they were to do that, right, based on my interpretation of morality being self-interpreted, I can't say that what they're doing is wrong if they truly believe that that is good, right? Who am I to infringe on their belief, right? But most of us do think that that was wrong. Why? Because I think that we do have a creator. That creator has set out good and bad for us, right? And we think that those things are heinous because of this internal inclination, right? And this internal inclination to what good and bad means, it exists because we have a God, we have a creator. And again, I'm just sort of rehashing what C.S. Lewis has said just to deepen my own understanding. One, I guess, claim that a person brought up to him was, well, what about witches, right? 300 years ago, we thought they were evil. I mean, we killed them because we thought they were evil and so forth. And now we don't do that. And that's interesting, right? Because it seems like, our morality changes, or is something that isn't constant. And if we do have a creator, then that wouldn't make sense if it were to, change, every few hundred years. That's a bit strange, right? Well, C.S. Lewis says that actually, not killing witches anymore isn't about morality. It's simply about knowledge, right? It's not that our morality has changed. It's that we simply don't consider witches to be real, or it's not real, but present anymore, right? For example, and he uses a great example, I think, with mice. So suppose that I have a bunch of mice scurrying around my home, and for most people, they don't like mice, and I set mouse traps to catch the mice, to kill them. Is it humane? Is it inhumane? If I stop setting mouse traps, is that less humane, or is that more humane, right? And a good example he uses is, well, consider both cases. So suppose that let's consider the case of it being humane, and it being inhumane later to set mouse traps. So consider that I set mouse traps to kill mouse because there's mice running around, and it's humane, right? It's humane to kill mouse traps. There's no issues with killing mice. Well, if I stop setting mouse traps because there aren't any mice, does that make me any more or less humane? Answer is no, right? It's a humane thing to do, and not doing it doesn't make me any less or more humane. Now, I suppose that it's inhumane to set mouse traps to kill mice because there's some agreed upon morality that killing or harming animals is bad. So suppose that setting mouse traps is actually inhumane, right? And that it's inhumane to kill mice. Well, if I remove the mouse traps because there aren't any mice, does that make me more or less humane? Suppose it's inhumane to set mouse traps. So if I don't set mouse traps, I guess I'm humane, and I let mice scurry around. But if I've set mouse traps and it's inhumane, and I don't set mouse traps when there aren't any mice, does that make me any more or less humane? And the answer is no. I'm not more humane because I haven't set mouse traps, because I don't think there are any mice. I would be more humane, right, if I didn't set mouse traps and there were mice. But because there aren't mice and I don't set any mouse traps, that's not making me more or less humane, right? Because I don't think there are mice in my home. That's a similar thing with burning these witches, right? Morality hasn't changed. I'm not more or less humane. It's simply because I don't believe there are witches anymore, right? Because if there were, then people would still likely kill them. And you can take this example like linking to a terrorist, right? I don't believe many people were extremely upset or protested against the hunting and killing of the terrorist Osama bin Laden, right? And that's because we think that that person was likely putting more people in danger than good, right? So people didn't think it was inhumane, and I'm speaking more broadly. So yeah, not sure where this is going actually, but that's sort of where I've gone up to in my first chapter, and yeah, I'm going to try and read and summarize different bits of it for my own understanding, and also because I have a lot of non-Christian friends, especially those who are interested in faith, asking me about Christianity and faith. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for me to share, and C.S. Lewis has done an amazing job in Me Christianity. And I'm trying to learn, digest, and summarize these learnings so I can give helpful answers and point those who are curious about faith in the right direction.